Jeff, we're ready? Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. Rabbi Jacobson here. I welcome you all, those in the audience here and also online. I do know, I can't tell you everyone online because it's an anonymous world out there, but I do know that we have a avid listener or viewer every week all the way in New Zealand, where now it's noon on Thursday. So she can tell us about the future in that sense of the world. And so it's just amazing to me the powers of technology, that though we all use it for our own, entertainment or business opportunities, it also has the opportunity, and maybe this is the reason it was created for in the first place, to connect souls together. I always like to feel that our coming together here is a type of soul intersection where we live in a world that we are all extremely, I would say, consumed or busy with most of our material engagements, meaning that most of our lives were simply involved and immersed in a physical life, which is a third of our lives are asleep, physically I mean, and then between eating and drinking and shopping and health and so many of other physical realities consumes another large part of our lives. You can say that 95% of a person's life is mostly involved with the means. With 5%, that's already good news if it's 5% involved with the end, like the higher goals. And then, of course, most of us are occupied during our waking hours with work, which, of course, also spills over into our sleeping hours. You dream about what you think by day, as the Talmud says. So basically, we are physical creatures in a physical world, consumed with and involved with our material activities. And there's very little room, to put it bluntly, for our souls. So though if you asked any individual, what is the primary force in your life, and what is your greatest aspiration, most people will define it in some transcendental way. And yet we have very little time to invest in that direction. So what most of us do is we compartmentalize, and we break our lives into components where we look for these moments of escape, weekends or holidays or travel or whatever you call it, that time out where we so-called nurture and nourish our spirits. And different people do it different ways. We have many different tools at our disposal, from the search for transcendence, whether it's through music or art or travel or romance or spirituality and religion and faith and holidays. So people, different strokes for different folks. Everyone's got their tools or their methods of so-called feeding their deeper spirits. And then, of course, there's also ways to feed it in an unhealthy way, which we also gravitate to. If we don't find a healthy outlet for our dreams, we'll find an unhealthy one. That's the way the human spirit works. And the monotony and the vicissitudes of life, which means the routines that tend to wear us down, build up a certain surge and a certain need to break out. Some people call a high. And that high will be filled one way or another, because the human being thrives on passion and on excitement and looks for something that is electric. And that can come from, as I said, healthy ways and unhealthy ways. Speaking in the context of a Jewish context, especially now that we just entered a month that is called a month of transcendence, as we shall soon discuss. So we are approaching quickly to the holiday called Passover, which is a holiday of transcendence. Again, as I shall soon discuss. So, Judaism, religion in general, and Judaism in particular, suffers from this disparity that I just mentioned, where on one hand you have people who are obsessively and fanatically connected to the rituals and details and minutiae of religion and Judaism, especially Passover of all the holidays is the most obsessive of them all. And I hope I'm not saying this. My intention is not to be in any way demeaning to anybody, including to my own grandmothers and the grandfathers and all the generations that came before us that I witnessed, as I witnessed my mother. I lack for better word, as I said, obsessively searching for every crumb of bread or derivatives of bread and derivatives of derivatives. And it goes on many, many levels, if anyone familiar with Talmudic literature knows. And literally turning over the entire house. I think spring cleaning is I guess a secular assimilated version that evolved from Pesach cleaning. I don't know, you can look that up. I don't know if that's scientifically accurate, but it makes sense. So the spring cleaning takes on, as I said, very obsessive dimensions when it comes to any very orthodox environment. So growing up around this, I'm quite familiar with it. So on one hand, it seems very passionate. But on the other hand, you start thinking, why are they so crazy about this crumb? So if you find an extra crumb, big thing. And it doesn't begin a day before Passover. It begins a month before, weeks before, months before. Who knows? Some people, I'm sure, begin many months before. And then the Passover holiday itself is filled with all these regulations and guidelines of what you're supposed to eat and what you're not supposed to eat and when you're supposed to eat it. The Seder, by definition, the word Seder means order. It's not just an order; it's a very rigid order, and anything. As a child, I can tell you, for me, it was anything but freeing when I was celebrating the Seder. It was nice to be with my family and uncles and aunts and all the warmth and nostalgia that comes with family getting together, at least when it's a functional family. Later I was to discover that no family is really completely functional, but that's another topic for another time. So, but on the other hand, I as I think I mentioned here, I definitely fondly recall, but also weirdly recall, where my uncle and my uncles were older than I was. So, like, there's a place in the Haggadah, in the Seder, during the Passover Seder, where you're supposed to be leaning. You lean where you eat certain foods and drink the wine, etc. And I had one uncle who kept on, banging my head to the, lean. So I said to him, why do you have to lean? He says, because you have to be free. And he's banging me so it's a guy that shackles you and ties you up and then puts you in prison and says, I'll do anything to keep you free. You don't feel free. And so I never had to go to therapy, thank God for this. It wasn't that deep of an impact, but it definitely it left me with the taste of another Woody Allen scene of these paradoxes. On one hand, religion being so-called has a certain beauty to it. But on the other hand, the rigidity of the rituals can be comical on one end, but also actually quite tragic in a way. Because in my case, it was somewhat humorous and amusing at best, or at worst, rather. But I know, and I've since learned, that many people growing up in such environments actually were deeply hurt by the rigidity of religion, because it was only about a ritual completely hollow and empty of spiritual, of soul. And when that is added into equation of a non-functional family or a dysfunctional family, and religion becomes another weapon of abuse, then it's not such a laughing matter. And since I've seen that and I've witnessed it in very tragic ways, so it's not just a small little thing. It happens to be a very profound element. So on one hand, you have Judaism, Passover, and all that comes with it, with very strict laws. It's the laws of Passover in Shulchan Aruch are thousands and thousands of lines, hundreds and hundreds of pages, and all the details from everything, as I said, from eating and from selling the chametz to the whole way you perform a seder, At the other end of the extreme, one has to ask the question, how many people who really follow the Passover rituals feel freer? Not only during the Seder, but afterwards. For me, if I may, since I already have the platform here, and I can admit, I can use this for group therapy, at least for myself, to release all the repressed things I couldn't say to my uncles, or else I would have been beaten up. So here's my chance to get even. So for me, the most freeing part of the Passover Seder, which is a little sacrilegious, and my father is in heaven, so I'm sure he'll smile. My mother didn't smile so much when this would happen. Was actually when they finish the first half of the Haggadah, which is like you finish eating the matzah, then you have the maror, the herbs, and then you have the mixture of the two, sandwich. Now, if you never thought of a sandwich, like I had guests at my table, they say, "Oh, finally, there's going to be a sandwich." Little did they know that's not exactly the sandwich that you usually get. It's not a submarine, It's basically matzah and bitter herbs. That's it. Instead of bitter herbs and matzah separately, you combine them with a little lettuce in between, whatever it is. But it sounds good. They say, look forward to the sandwich part. You think that afterwards, the custom is to, before the meal begins, which is always a little more fun part, is to eat an egg. So I don't know where I developed this addiction to eggs, but probably from the Seder, because after 2 hours or whatever it is, an hour of sitting and being bopped on your head by your uncle, or being forced to ask the 4 questions, the egg to me was like redemption. I felt I was coming out of Mitzrayim after an hour or a deal of the Haggadah. So I became crazily obsessed with eggs. What I mean by that is that I would, go to the kitchen, make sure I didn't just have one. I don't want to tell you the maximum that I've had. It's embarrassing. And, all year round, they just don't have quite the same taste. They don't have the same... So that was my spiritual redemption, was the egg part, right before the beginning of the meal. So there you go. What else I have to tell you here tonight? You came to hear this secret, this is the Kabbalistic secret of the redemption. So, until this day, I still have this thing, and my kids make fun, and everybody, Tati with his going after the eggs, find the hard-boiled eggs. So everyone's got their Seder thing. But, as I said, on a more serious note, the fact is that, as opposed to 300-400 years ago, most of the Jews in this world kept and followed a Seder to the letter of the law. Today, you could say that 85% of Jews probably do not. And even though Seder has become part of culture, but definitely is not something that you'd see as a deeply spiritual experience. So when religion and faith and ritual becomes divorced from the spiritual, it's not just a small matter. It happens to have very deep implications. The message is that it's not relevant to our lives. We do these things blindly, or out of obligation, or out of guilt, or 1,000 other different reasons, out of fear, and so on. Instead of really understanding that this perhaps has a whole deeper dimension to it. So with that being said, the focus of this evening's class, as those of you that got the reminders, send out a Wednesday reminder of the class with a topic, which forces me to talk about the topic, and Philip will understand what that means. So the topic being this month has particular power. In Judaism, time is energy. So every time releases its own power. Time is not just like a invisible force that we just use to measure past, present, and future. Time is energy. And every month has its unique energy. So the energy of this month is the energy of transcendence and redemption and freedom. But it's also hinted to in the word, the name of the month. So just for the record, the biblical names for the months are not by their names. They're actually used by number. So this month is called the first month. When the Jews left Egypt, it's called the first month. The second month would be Iyar. The third month would be Sivan, and so on. Tishrei, when we celebrate Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the high holidays, is the 7th month. But there's another name for this month which is more popular. The name that says Shemesh Ha'olo Imam Bavel, when the Jews came back from Babylon after the destruction of the first temple. So they actually developed names. Some of them are mentioned in Tanakh. Names that most of them actually are Aramaic or or Persian in their root. And one of the names is, this month's name is called Nissan. So Nissan, the Talmud asks, what does the word Nissan mean? It has a meaning. So the Talmud says Nissan is from the word Nes. Nes means a miracle. And Nissan means more than just Nes. Nissan is nissim nasilo. The Talmud says that this is a month where not just miracles, but miracles of miracles took place. On a very technical, practical level, it means because this was the month when the Jews miraculously were redeemed from Egypt after 210 years of oppression, and with no hope and no possibility of escape. The Talmud, the Medrash says that Egypt was the superpower of the world. So there really was, it says Egypt had such a powerful hold and such control over their population that not even one servant, not one slave was able to ever escape. So there was no natural hope for them to ever be free from this place. But things turned around miraculously, and therefore Passover Nissan, the month of Passover, the 15th day, smack in the middle of the month, the full moon, which we shall celebrate and commemorate in 2 weeks. And Passover begins Monday night, so it's a little less than 2 weeks by now. On the 15th of the month, the moon is full, middle of the day, the Torah tells us the Jews left miraculously from this God-forsaken place called Mitzrayim. So therefore that is the main miracle of the month. But within that miracle of Mitzrayim, of course, came many other miracles. And hence nissim, many miracles. The miracles that came later on the 7th day of Passover was the parting of the sea. But if you break it down, many things happened that were completely unnatural or supernatural, miraculous. And therefore the month is called the month of miracles, Nissan. Now when we say the word miracle, in general, it's very, like every word, we use it lightly and we can use it euphemistically and seriously. Now what exactly does the word miracle mean? So the most fantastic interpretation of miracle, a miracle means something completely supernatural that suspends the laws of nature, that no one can deny. Now, do such miracles happen in our lifetimes? Well, look around. Have you seen a miracle in your life of that nature? A suspension of nature would mean a real, obvious, empirical, undeniable suspension. Those things don't happen that often. We may believe that they happen, or may believe that they happened in the past. So that's one extreme of the definition of miracle. Then there's miracle where someone says, it's a miracle, I met someone I haven't seen in 20 years. Something like that. Or it's a miracle that little Johnny didn't get dirty today at school, or something like that. So we use the word miracle in that sense of something like unexpected, and we don't really mean it in any type of deeper way than just something that we didn't expect. Something was not planned for, something spontaneous. So the word miracle is like all words, just to use it, and as I always point out in this class, to me the greatest challenge in teaching and in communicating and writing is not what to say, but what words to use, but actually what words not to use. Because words are loaded, and words have all kinds of layers of meanings, and they mean something to you, they may not mean to me. When I use the word miracle, you use the word miracle, or do we mean the same thing? Yeah, or generally we mean this with the same category. So words, for all their benefits of helping bridge the gap between people, in the sense of creating a communication tool, also can create separation between people, because words mean different things to different people. Now when you look at the word miracle in Hebrew, nes, it has a lot other meaning, a whole different level of meaning. The word nes actually, like every Hebrew word, has a meaning. Let me just give you one preface. It's important because this too is important. Language itself. Among the languages that we are familiar with, that we speak or write in, there are two categories of languages. One is what we'll call descriptive languages. Most Latin-based languages like English or French or Spanish and so on are descriptive languages. And then there's another type of category called metaphorical languages. Hebrew is the ultimate metaphorical language, as you'll see in a moment. Even Chinese is more metaphorical than some of the more Eastern languages are more metaphorical than Western languages, for obvious reasons. And generally mystical language is always more metaphorical than tangible language. So if you think of Western philosophy or Western thinking as being more like a square, and Eastern philosophy like a circle, yin and yang, then obviously their languages also reflect these type of different ways of expressing things. So for instance, in real Eastern thought, the goal there of language is to learn how to appreciate that which is beyond language, the abstract. And the abstract cannot really be described. You can only extrapolate. So we use words to like almost say, it's not like this, it's not like that, it's not like that. So by process of elimination, you figure out what it's like. Hebrew is a very interesting language in that sense because it bridges the two. There's very clear, tangible words, but they are metaphorical in nature. So the word nes, just to use that as the operative word of this evening. So the word nes comes from, as there are books, there's a book called Sefer Aruch, and other digduk books. They're called, digduk means grammatical, etymology and so on, that define the meaning of words. So the word nes also comes from aru nisi ala harim. Where's the word nes used in the Bible? So these books search for the roots of the words by looking in the Bible. So where's the word nes used? So there's an expression, aru nisi ala harim, which means to raise a flag above the mountains. So nes is really the meaning of a flag. But the question is, why is a flag called a nes? So in other verses, nes is referred to something that is uplifting. It lifts you up. It's interesting that would be the definition of miracle. Most of us would not call that a miracle. A miracle, as I said, most of us see as an event. Some type of supernatural event, maybe not so supernatural as I defined earlier. To call it something that's uplifting is a completely different way of looking at it. And when you think of it, it actually gets to the root of what a miracle is. When we say, for example, God forbid, we went to the doctors and the doctors didn't have any hope for somebody. So all we can do as doctors will say, we wait for a miracle. What we're really saying is, obviously, literally it means wait for something to happen that medicine predicts that this is not a good, hopeful situation. And a miracle is that something will happen, something magical, something divine, something unexpected that no one could have planned for. A person will come out of the challenge. But what it really means, as I'm defining it in the Hebrew, is that the miracle, the hope that there's a hope in a miracle, is really something of believing or connecting to something that is possible, that's beyond the logical system or the range that we usually expect. So if you think of it that way, then it's like an uplifting experience. The idea is that here we live our lives on a very, as I mentioned earlier, a monotone, a type of consistent routine that can be very boring. And a miracle suddenly throws in another energy that lifts us up to another place. That's what a miracle does. If you were to witness a miracle, whatever form of miracle, I'm not even getting into the definition of how you define that miracle. What it ultimately does, it lifts the spirit. If you can see, if I saw a miracle, that would give me hope, that would give me faith. So when you really think of it that way, then it's not really an event or a phenomenon. It's actually the effect that it has on us. Which is why we shall soon see that the way Jewish mystics put it is that miracles are happening all the time. It's just that we're not aware of them. So someone who is aware is uplifted by the same thing that you would see as being completely meaningless, another person would see as being magical. Why is it that some people walk around this earth and they look at the same thing you and I look at, and they dance and they sing, and for us it's just, we yawn. What are they seeing that we don't see? This is the essence of really what a miracle is all about. So to discuss it in a more, I would say, psychological and spiritual context, and really appreciate what this month is about, what Passover is about, it's important to, I think, first give a type of, call it a mystical description of existence. So what's the opposite of a miracle in Hebrew? The opposite of a nes is teva. Nes and teva. What does teva mean? Teva means nature. But just like miracle, as I pointed out, doesn't mean much until you get to the root of it. What does nature mean? When you say something is natural, what makes something natural? And what makes something unnatural? No? If you think about it, the word means nothing. In Tanya, he says the word nature is used by people for anything that they just don't understand. They call it nature. It's natural. Now today, with cameras and with the ability to observe the animal kingdom and the vegetable kingdom and the world in a way that we never been able to observe before, and you see this on nature shows, and you see it, these shows that just follow or discover, there is not one cell, not one fiber, not one aspect of natural world that is what you would call monotonous. It's all in a way unnatural when you really look at it. So the word for nature really is a word we use for saying that's the way things are. That's the way things go. Oh, that's natural. It's almost like a dismissive word. And as we shall see, it's really a very false word. The word teva in Hebrew, just like nes has a root, the word teva also has a root. The root for the word teva comes from the word submerged. The verse is tavu b'yamsuf. They were submerged, they were drowned in the sea. Now what does teva have to do with being drowned? So the mystics explain it in a very beautiful way. Listen to this, it's really beautiful. They say, when you look at the water, at the surface of the ocean, what do you see? You see very little. I mean, you see waves. Once in a while you may see a fish jump out. But you don't see much. If we had no clue, we never went under the water, under the sea, under the ocean cover, you had no clue what is going on, what's brimming, what kind of world is brimming underneath. No way. Because the sea, in its own way, like in its own innocuous and very innocent way, covers up of everything that's going on beneath it. Now today we know, because we either dive there and swam under the water, or through cameras, or submergibles and all of the different equipment that we have today, we know not only is there a world down there, it's a world that's far more complex than Earth itself. It's a world that's covers the Earth, 2/3 of the Earth is water, and 1/3 is land. It's a world that has more species than all the species on land. And it has a world that has earthquakes and volcanoes and mountains and valleys, that if you were to drain the whole Earth of water, we would not recognize this globe at all. Until this day, we still have not mapped the ocean surface because of it's so difficult to do so. And this is just a few miles away from us. We know more about outer space and certain planets than we know about, which is millions of miles away, than we know about our own ocean. So what is this like mystery about it? And if you think about it from in a more emotional, I could say, more poetic way, the ocean does mystify us and very much enamors us. Look at the Titanic, how it's obsessed so many people. It's not just the sing of the Titanic. I think it's a combination of, number one, the awe of the power of this ocean. The sheer power, how it can humble anything. No matter how big something humans can build, this ocean completely can obliterate it and you won't even see it. It just sinks beneath it. On the other hand, the ocean has this power that we know we survive. And we would not have life as we know it on Earth without the seas and the oceans and the currents and rain and all that the oceans create. So it's a very mysterious entity. But getting back to the word teva, what the ocean tells us, the mystics say, is a real model of what existence is like. We see a surface level, and it completely conceals everything beneath it. This is what nature is. And that's why the word nature. So nature really means a reality that is submerged beneath the surface. Now think of yourself as a person and tell me whether this doesn't fit our description. What are you like? Are you like what you project? It would be an insult for most, I think most of us, if not all of us, if someone said to you, you are what you see is what you get. You look at somebody, we all have, I guess, body language. We all have an image that we project. But you know, internally, that within yourself there are layers and layers and layers that are far, far more complex, that can never be visible to the naked eye. And just as the ocean has layers, I would say the human being has probably more layers in their psyche, and especially once you enter into the world of the unconscious, that are completely submerged beneath this cover called the outer layer of existence. So teva, if you think about it, the word nature really means a concealment. It's a state of concealment where things are submerged to the point that you cannot recognize they're even there. You can have a feeling in your heart right now that no one, even you may not even know you have it. That's how submerged it is. But let's say you know, but you could hide it to the point no one else does. You can smile to someone and then have very negative feelings about them, stab them in the back. And the same, you could look sour, but inside have very positive feelings. So what you see is never what you get, to be honest. So though this great cliche, never judge a book by its cover, I don't know if anybody in this world doesn't judge a book. Everyone judges books by its cover. I can tell you, personal experience, that billions of dollars are spent on book designs. If no one judged books by their covers, nobody would be working on book designs and book covers, the whole industry. When I say book covers, I don't just mean books, all packaging for that matter. Packaging, it's all about the packaging. So we are people who judge things by the cover, and that is what nature is by definition. Teva. So there you have Teva and Nes, two contrary, you can say, antithetical states of being. One where things are submerged, and the other one where things are elevated. So you could say a Nes is the exact opposite of Teva. A miracle is the exact opposite of nature. Where nature submerges and hides the forces within, a miracle reveals them. So when we really say a miracle, what we're saying is we were exposed to, or we became aware of, a reality that we didn't expect, because what you expect is on the surface. But in truth, it's not something that's really a miracle in the supernatural. It was always there. It's just that you didn't recognize it. So if someone, let's say, who looks at an ocean and is unaware at all of what's going on beneath it, and then someone dives down below and comes back with a fish, someone will say, wow, that's a miracle. Yes, it's a miracle because you didn't see it on the surface, but it's not in the sense that it was always there. So here, this story, I think, captures it in a personal way. The Baal Shem Tov says the difference between a miracle and natural event, he calls it, the difference is frequency. Which means that if the sun were to rise once in our lifetimes, only once, we would all come rushing out to see this miraculous event. And we would have camera crews and bring our children and prepare and probably who knows what. Some parts of the world do that when there's a solar eclipse. But since the sun rises every morning, it becomes literally meaningless to us. So what? Because we need a rush of excitement and a high and a novelty to make us feel like something happened. If not, we just dismiss it as another routine nature. So the Baal Shem Tov says, a real miracle is seeing the extraordinary within the ordinary and seeing the supernatural within the natural. It's frequency. The frequency is what numbs our senses. So it's about us, not about the event. When people say, I'm waiting for a miracle, they're waiting for what? For what exactly are they waiting? The miracle is happening right now. It's just that you need something new because you are limited, or you got used to it, or you got accustomed to it. So here's the story I was going to share. Years ago, this class, when we were at a different location, it was a smaller group of people, and at the end of the class we had this, like, I guess, schmooze. And people were sharing the work they do. Everyone understands what they do, what their job is. So there was one guy in the room, and he said he was a pediatrician. And he was very proud of it. And I remember someone asking him, like, if he, how does he feel so, he was sharing how happy of a person he is due to his work, the life he's involved with, and bringing life into this world. So someone asked him, like, exactly to describe what was so special about it. And this is the way he put it. And he said it almost nonchalantly, naturally, but I saw it as miraculously. And this is what he said. He said he was working at the time in had a private practice, but he was also associated with the New York hospital. So on the 8th floor, I think, they have their delivery floor. So the way he put it was, so at times I deliver children, newborn children. Sometimes it's the middle of the day, sometimes the middle of the night. We don't know. God decides that the child should be born. We don't plan these things. And sometimes in the middle of the day, I hear the rush hour down below, the FDR, which runs right under the New York hospital. And I think to myself, the contrast. Here you have a world out there rushing. In this rush hour, you can hear the horns honking and the brakes screeching, and the tempers flaring. People are rushing. Where are they rushing to? So some people are rushing home, some people are rushing to a show, some people to an appointment, to dinner. Most people are rushing just to rush, just to get out of the rush hour. That's also a rush. And by contrast, what am I doing? I'm sitting here in a room, or standing in a room, with very few people. There's no bumper-to-bumper traffic. There's myself, of course the mother, attending nurse, whoever else. And the quiet of a room, in a very, no fireworks, no glamour, nothing dramatic. The most miraculous thing of life is about to happen, the beginning. A new birthing of a child. And nobody's coming to rush to see this. So when I think of the contrast of a world out there rushing to all the most important things, and I could be part of and witness and be part of the miracle of a birth, of a newborn child, it always brings tears to my eyes. That's what the pediatrician said, and makes me appreciate life in a new way. He said it was quite captivating. So I remember at that time I was giving, I think, the class on the Upper West Side. So I decided, instead of taking the West Side Highway, I'm going to take the FDR my way back to see this experience from first hand. Not that I was going to the hospital, I meant to say, I wanted to be in the rush hour, that's what I meant. So for some odd reason, New York is very weird. Sometimes in the rush hour you can just zoom through FDR. Sometimes like 1 o'clock in the morning there's a backup for some reason. Whether it's construction or some other, it's one of the New York paradoxes. So I got myself stuck in a rush hour, and I was like envisioning a rush hour, everybody, what the doctor had just said. And it struck me what he said, and he was a secular man, he was Jewish, but what he said was what the Baal Shem Tov said, except he put it in his own personal terms, was that a miracle is happening all the time, we just don't notice it, because we're busy with so many other things. And yes, what is the greatest miracle of life than not the beginning of each of our lives? So you were all there by your births. Can we say that be as a logical statement? Yeah? Does anyone dispute that? But no one remembers it. Right. We may have witnessed other births. We may have given birth ourselves. But the thing is, there's no question that your beginning. Okay. Technically, I know you could argue the beginning begins at conception. But frankly, conception is no less of a miracle. And you definitely don't remember that, right? I would assume. So the point is that what happens exactly? How is it possible that we have miracles like this in our lives, and it's so easy to forget? That's why that word teva is such a powerful word, because it's telling you it's like throwing something in the water. Once it becomes more than once in your life, once it becomes a routine, you now have a battle, a little battle, a war, to discover the miracle, the miraculous in it. Because there's something about the whole of this material world that creates the illusion of monotony and routine, and that where we cease to think of things as constantly magical, constantly being renewed. We don't see renewal, and we don't see freshness in existence. We need something to remind us. So we go out to look for things. We go for the high. We go look for something that's going to stimulate us. It's usually a substance that's outside of us. I'm not even getting into whether it's healthy or not healthy. But why is it that we cannot access the miracles that are happening beneath the surface? Because this powerful teva, this concealment, is not neutral. It is an aggressive force that is invested in concealing anything that's unique in this world. So when Kehelet, King Solomon, writes the most depressing words in Ecclesiastes, The whole book is depressing, frankly, until the last verse. But he says, Der Heilig v'der ba, a generation comes and a generation goes. Ve'en kol chodesh tachas hashemesh. And there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, what is throws more cold water on all your aspirations and dreams and thinking that you're going to innovate something unique when someone comes and tells you, hey, my friend, they've been dreaming like you for thousands of years, nothing changes. A generation comes, everybody's born, everybody dies, and nothing changes. And then when they add what some of the good Jewish cynics say, that in Har HaZeisim, on the Mount of Olives, which is the ancient cemetery in Jerusalem, it says, here lies a man who thought he was indispensable. You know, this is the cynical way of like dismissing anything that was significant, anything significant about our lives. So when you get down to it on an existential level, it's a very profoundly existential, lonely place, especially when you read many of the philosophies that really teach us, make the best of this party as best as you can, but don't take yourself too seriously, because nothing really changes. And King Solomon continues there, he says, all the rivers run to the sea, and the sea doesn't get full. So you could think you're a big river and you have a lot to contribute, and then the sea doesn't get full. This is the classic, and there are thousands and thousands of other such statements, which is essentially numbing us from believing that anything makes a difference. Yes, right now it may make a difference to you this second, but in the big scheme of things, does anyone really care? Will you be remembered? And so on and so forth. And this is a real voice. Some of us have this voice very loud inside of us, some of us don't. But what is really the response? So whenever I address this topic, I have to always add a disclaimer that I remember once I addressed it and someone came to me afterwards and said, I can't believe you talk about it. I came here for hope. After, the problem is that after they only heard the first half of my class, they forgot to hear the other half. So you have to add a disclaimer, because most people think the only way to really fight this voice is by not letting it speak to you. I frankly come from an education and a belief that the best way to defang the enemy, or diffuse it, is not by silencing it, is by letting it speak, but having a better answer than the question. So I find fascinating that when the mystics really go ahead and try to analyze, and this is what bothered everyone from the beginning of time. You go through the Bible and you really think about what Moses tells the people. This was the biggest problem. It was not how do you inspire people. It's how do you maintain the inspiration when the high is gone. What do you do after the hangover, basically? The day after, the morning after. Inspiring someone is relatively easy. I'm not saying it's so easy for everyone or in every situation, but maintaining it is the challenge. That's the hard one. People come to me for counseling, sometimes couples before they get married. So I say, look, they ask me, how much do you charge for this? I said, I don't take money. You can make a donation to the Meaningful Life Center. But let me just tell you that the donation for my counseling before your marriage is one thing. The maintenance contract is a lot more expensive. Because once the honeymoon is over, it's a whole different world. What they say, what difference between an engagement and a war in the military. Since I spoke for the military, I looked up some military jokes. So engagement is what happens before the marriage, and the war is after. That's what they say is the difference. So there's a honeymoon stage that we all can ride on, but then there's a point where you have to deal with reality. So the question that any thinking person has is, how is it possible? The fact is, I felt deeply inspired by something. Something happened in my life. And just think of any moment in your life where you really had an epiphany, you fell in love, anything that was majorly powerful. Everybody had a moment like that. What happened to it? It may be a distant memory today. Why is it that you can't access it and relive it again and again? So of course it could be because there were disappointments in between, and that what happened, you came to discover broken promises, shattered dreams, and all the sadness that comes from a great expectation, and then when it ends up being a failure. So of course it breaks our spirit and makes it difficult to hold on to something. But what about those moments, and then you start doubting yourself and wondering whether you ever had it. Maybe it was an illusion. Maybe you wanted to believe it. Maybe you were manipulated. Maybe you were just vulnerable or something like that. And that doesn't help the situation, because then if that's the case, then you put up your defense mechanisms to make sure it doesn't happen again, because you want to get hurt again. So in effect, what happens is you close yourself off from having any more magical moments. Is that better? So all these questions are not small questions. They affect us again and again in our lifetimes. And the fact is that as we grow older, I don't know if that's a depressing statement, but we do. As we grow older, the fact is that usually the ideology of our youth, or when we're younger, gets weaker as we get a little older. That's the way it is. That's the way the clock ticks. That's the nature of things, right? So with all these questions, when it comes to a month like this of Nissan and redemption, if it doesn't address something like this, frankly, what does it address? What is redemption? If it's not redemption from these type of challenges, and how we can find true hope and true magic and true miracles in our lifetimes, what are we celebrating? So of course the classical answer, which is the monotonous answer, would be we celebrate that the Jews experienced a miracle 3,300 and, what is it now, 20 years ago. To be exact, 3,322 years ago. Okay, great. So we're riding on their high, basically. So they left Mitzrayim, and we're celebrating their redemption. What does it do for us? Okay, you could say it's a nice nostalgic moment. They say nostalgia is not like what it used to be. So what does it do for us today? And then we're told in the Talmud says, V'chol der v'der, in every generation, a person has to envision as if they just left Mitzrayim. So I have a friend who actually is doing it right now. He went to Egypt physically with his son to experience it. When he told me about it, he already made his plans. I said, that's not exactly what you have to do. You can do it without buying a ticket to go to Egypt. You can do it even in the United States. So what does it mean? How does that translate in a practical way? That we're supposed to relive. And what kind of expectation is that anyway? Why should... it's one thing to celebrate that our ancestors were redeemed. But why do we have to experience as if we were enslaved? What point is there in that? We could celebrate the redemption. And we eat bitter herbs to symbolize the bitterness of their bondage, and so on. So the answer is, and the only answer is, again the same thing. If you look at the Torah and Judaism with naked eyes, you look at the Teva, the nature of the Torah, then there is no real answer to this question, except it's a ritual. God told us to do it. I don't really understand why, but it's what we do. Maybe it has some value in the, as I said, nostalgic sense of it. It connects us to our ancestors, connects us to tradition. But if you look beneath the surface, you discover a whole magical miracle emerging from it, and that is that we actually do experience and have the power to re-experience again and again the exodus from Egypt, by understanding that leaving Egypt is not just a physical journey, leaving a country called Egypt and going into the wilderness on the way to the promised land. It's actually a spiritual exodus. What is the spiritual exodus? It's not just about a slave no longer being a slave. It's about getting rid of slavery in our spirit, in our psyche. You can be emancipated, but remain with a slave mentality. So the Maral of Prague writes that when the Jews left Egypt, from there on, they never again would ever have a slave mentality. They changed fundamentally. It wasn't just a one-time event. They got out of their bondage. They became essential free people, that they never again would worship anything or be bound to any sovereignty besides God. So when it says, Avodai Heim, God says, you are my servants, v'lei avodim la'avodim. You're not servants to my servants. That's not just a technicality, it's a whole different psyche that the spirit is not bound by and is not subjugated to any human being, to any human institution or device. That there's a true inner spiritual freedom. Now, Mitzrayim, again the Hebrew word for Egypt, means constraints. Netzar, it means a boundary, constraints. You can say every inhibition, every fear, every psychological and spiritual and emotional trap that keeps us trapped is your Mitzrayim. And it's here right now, not 3,322 years ago. It's right here, right now. And it recreated every moment that you have a fear of something, whatever it is. Fear of commitment. Anybody have that fear? A fear of relationships, a fear of the unknown, of the future, where the economy is going, or psychological fears that are connected to our childhood and to our families and so on. This is your Mitzrayim, period. And Yetzias Mitzrayim is free yourself from it, because you have the ability to access a part of your soul that is not trapped and is not bound by all those fears. So the challenge is, how do you find that part of the soul that is not afraid and not be trapped and held hostage by the forces in your life that do keep you trapped in fear? That's the challenge. But that is really the significance of Passover and the significance of this month. So in other words, it's really about how you get out of nature and get into a state of miracle. That you should be a walking miracle and experiencing miracles all around you, instead of a walking natural force that is just trapped by the monotony. So King Solomon, in his own words, even though they sound so depressing, he also concealed within them the antidote and the solution. What he says is, Ein kol chadash tachas hashemesh. A generation comes and a generation goes and there's nothing new under the sun. That's what he says. He didn't say there's nothing new in existence, or nothing new on earth, or nothing new, period. He says under the sun, tachas hashemesh, which immediately says to you, 1 second, and what's going on above the sun? And that's the answer. If you allow yourself to be trapped to the laws that bind us under the sun, then you will have, all you'll have is another generation come, another generation go, and no changes. You have nothing to show because people have been here before you. They also felt they were important. But if you access the part of our souls and spirits that's created B'Tselem Elokim, the divine image, which is above the sun and far above any sun, then you have opened up a channel of, you can say, like a new channel of electricity that's generated into your life that is completely new and completely fresh. So there you have two people can be experiencing the same experience, and one will see it as dead, numb, empty, and the other person will see it filled with life and filled with enthusiasm. You see this all the time. I'm sure some of us have friends, you meet them, you always feel deadened when you're in their presence. And then there are people you meet, you don't even need to say much. You see a sparkle, you see a twinkle, you see energy, and it just gives you strength. What is one seeing that the other is not seeing? They see the same world, same economy, they can see the same circumstances, and both on a technical level can be very depressing circumstances, but one is allowing their eyesight and their experience to be trapped by under the sun, by the rules of what they see, and the other reaches into a place that you cannot see, but you can access if you allow yourself to go there. And they access another energy, and that brings a new hope into the situation. Every leader, every innovator, every inspiring person is basically, I'm giving you maybe the more scientific definition, is essentially a person who's reaching into a place it's not that most of us cannot access. So when someone says, oh listen, I'm sad. If I had what that person had, I'd be happy. I don't want to use any expletives, but that's baloney. That's not true. Baloney. Strange words, okay. But it's a mystical word for something else. Kabbalistic. The fact of the matter is, as Viktor Frankl writes about one of the greatest tragedies of all, the Holocaust, that there were people in the same Holocaust. People came out completely, their whole spirits were destroyed. Impossible to continue on. People even committed suicide afterwards. And there are others, despite what they saw and experienced, came out with hope. And he tries to analyze why. It's not that one saw atrocities that the other didn't see. It's not that one lost family and the other one didn't. That's not true at all. And he comes down to, based on that, he develops, and he was a secular psychiatrist. He develops the theory of logotherapy, which is called Man in Search of Meaning. That meaning, and not the id, and not other forces, is the driving force in the human being. When you give a person feel that their life has meaning and their life has purpose, then they can overcome any type of challenge. In Hasidic terminology, the expression is used, we're told with a story. There were these two young, cynical guys that came to town for Shabbos in a shtetl in Russia. In Russia, cold winters. And they asked where they want to go to the mikveh. The custom by some is to go to the mikveh before Shabbos. They want to go to the mikveh, submerge themselves before Shabbos. So they say, well, it's in the middle of the winter, nobody really goes to the mikveh because the mikveh is situated at the edge of town. It's at the bottom of a mountain. It's very hard to get there. So in the summer, it's not a problem, but in the winter, the slopes are slippery, it's very snowy, very icy. He says, nobody in the entire town goes to the mikveh. He said, yeah, there's one old man, very quiet man, no one really knows he's a special man. He goes every Friday, goes every day for that matter. They say, one second, that 80-year-old man, how does exactly does he do it? We don't really know. So these two young whippersnappers decide they're going to follow him and going to see what's going on. They do follow him, and he no problem at all. He maneuvers his way down the slope. They both, one of them slips, the other one falls. They never end up going there. They just see he's able to go to the mikveh. He comes back. So Friday night they go over to him during the services, after the services, and ask him, tell us what we saw that you were able to. What is your secret? So he said an expression that has been used in Hasidic terminology. He said in Yiddish, he said, "Am zugebunden eben, fällt man nicht unten," which means when you're bound above, you don't fall below. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that he actually had a rope tied to the top of the mountain or something. It meant spiritually. So the two same people going into the same situation, two people entering into a pit, into a dark pit of life. And who of us has not gone through some darkness in our lives? So it's not the person who's gone through less darkness has more strength. It depends how you go in. If you go into the pit empty-handed, with nothing to hold on to, with no rope to hold on to, then yes, you'll usually slip. And it could be worse than that. Whereas if you have a rope, that doesn't mean it's not dark, and it doesn't mean it isn't difficult, but you have something to hold on to that counters it. And that's called spiritual resilience. It's the power to access a part of yourself, or access it in others, that helps you get through the difficult moments. So when it comes to this month, when we talk about miracles in nature, we have to realize the routines of our lives are not neutral. They are your enemies, to put it bluntly. They are enemies that create the illusion, like the surface of the sea, and conceal all the life inside of you. So all the hope, all the possibilities, all the dreams that you have are in your soul. What happens is it gets so submerged, and life sometimes breaks us to the point that we give up on them and we don't see them any longer. So we think they're no longer there. You look at the ocean, you don't see anything underneath it. That's Teva, and that's the curse of nature. So comes a month like Nissan, a month of Passover, and teaches us not just that this happened once thousands of years ago, that it's happening right now, and you have the power to access these forces. This month gives you special power. Now, the truth is you can access it all year round. But as I said earlier, different time has different energy. And this month has that energy that allows us more strength. It gives us more tools to access that inner part of our spirits and reach to others that can help us access it. And that there are miracles all the time taking place right now beneath the surface of each one of our lives. And without any doubt at all. The biggest trap, as I said, is the illusion that you don't have the ability. So it's just to use an example, when Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, the prophet, when he sees the destruction of the temple, so he writes the book of Lamentations, or the book of Eicha, which we read on Tisha B'Av. So I know we just finished the month of Adar, and when Nissan is the opposite extreme of, but nevertheless there's a lesson to be learned from there. So it says Mishanichnas of Kishem Shem Mishanichnas of L'maytim B'simcha is the same as means as of enters we diminish in joy, or as the Minchas Allah, the Munkatcher says that you diminish the sadness through joy. So too in this month of Adar that we just concluded, Purim, the month of Purim, we increase in joy. Nevertheless, there's a lesson to be learned from these two extremes. So in Yirmiyahu, the prophet, he begins the Eicha Yoshva Badad. It always struck me the opening. It says, woe. That's how translating into Hebrew. Eicha, woe. Or bemoans the fact, Yoshva Badad, that she sits alone. He's referring to she is the city of Jerusalem. So the first thing that Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah says of all the tragedy that he witnessed was that she sits alone. And it always struck me, why? Of all things, the loneliness was worse than anything else. That's how he opens up the book. There were thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people killed. The temple was destroyed. The holy temple. The desecration that came with it. The beginning of the exile. The long exile. First the Babylonian, then the Roman. So of all the things that he sees is not the deaths, and not the destruction, and not the desecration, and not the exile, but the loneliness of a city. That she sits alone because her inhabitants are being sent away, or being killed, or being expelled, exiled. And the truth is, I didn't have an answer until I met a man called Leonard Cohen. I'll tell you how that came about. So I was in California. I got to know him, the singer-songwriter. It's another story how, not for now. But I came to L.A., so he invited me to come over to his house. It was a Sunday afternoon. He actually came and picked me up. He's a very humble guy. And that time I was doing, it was the beginning of the, what was it? It was the end of the last century. How does that sound? Like 1999 or 2000, something like that. And the end of the 20th century. On a Sunday afternoon, a lonely Sunday afternoon, and I was doing a radio show then in New York, a live radio show from 6 to 7 here in New York, which was with the call-ins and so on. And it was a very interesting show. We kept on doing it until the station was sold to ESPN, and I refused to do sports radio, so that's that. So you stuck with me here. Philip, remember the show? It was an interesting show. It was a very interesting show. Most of the transcripts are actually online on our website. So this was the week of Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av was, I think, the next day or two. I don't remember what day in the week, maybe Tuesday. And I was meeting with Leonard Cohen on Sunday. Now it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and in New York time. California was later. I don't remember exactly, but I remember 3 o'clock California time. I had to do my show 6 o'clock. So I was in the Leonard Cohen's home, and I said to him, "I got to go." So he says to me, "I have a studio in the back here. You can do it here if you like." Which all I really needed was a telephone and a headset, and you can do it from anywhere because you don't have to be in the studio. It's radio. Actually, TV you could do the same today. But so we did it. So since the topic was loneliness, so I invited him on. I said, they call you the guru of loneliness or whatever you want to call it. So he said, I can't go on the show, but I will give you a poem to read that I've never shared with anyone. It's about loneliness. So I read it on the show. And the poem and my discussion with him gave me the idea of what I would discuss there. You see, the reason Jeremiah felt that loneliness is the worst is not because the loneliness per se is more painful or more difficult than all the other tragedies that took place. But it's when we're alone is when we don't have hope that we can get out of those tragedies. The most difficult thing in life is not a challenge. It's do we have the hope that we can face the challenge. I would submit this, that any one of us, no matter what circumstances we would be put into, and God bless everyone that you should only be in pleasant and happy circumstances. But my submission, my theory is this, that if you were put in the most difficult situation, if you knew that someone else was there with you, and that there are people who can help you get out of there, you're not alone, the whole experience would be different. So it's the loneliness, the illusion that we are completely alone in our pain, which is much more difficult than the pain itself. I'm not dismissing the pain, I'm not dismissing the tragedies. So what Jeremiah was saying was, that illusion that you really think you're completely alone, that is the hardest. Because there isn't, that rope isn't there. You see people in hospitals who are sick, and they have visitors and guests and people and so on, sending flowers and cards and all this stuff. And then someone else sitting right in the same room or another room, and I've witnessed this more than once. Nobody, no visitors, nobody there, they have no family, no one to talk to. There's no question that it has to have a negative, a deteriorating impact on that person's health. I'm not saying anything is guaranteed. God forbid things happen in any situation. Because when you don't have the hope, even on a very medical level, chemicals, hormones, whatever you want to call it, they're the juices that are stimulated in a person when people give you hope. That's how it is. You feel good about it, and you're strong, you want to fight, your willpower is stronger, your immune system gets intensified. So, to go back to the theme here, the point of nature, this word nature, and the routines of our lives, the regularity of it, even though it sounds so innocent, is actually a big enemy. Let me just qualify. I don't mean the regularity of good things. It's always good to have regularly eat and regularly breathe and so on. That's not what I mean. I mean the monotony that sets in due to regularity. So King David writes at the end of the book of Psalms, he writes, last verse in the 150th Psalm, he writes, Kol neshama neshama tahalal ka. Every soul, he says twice, neshama, neshama, praises God. So Medrash Tillim, the Medrash on Tillim, on the Psalms, explains what's the redundant neshama. What are the two souls? So the Medrash says, neshama could also be read neshima, every breath a person takes, every breath. Because neshama and neshima is the same word. It also, in the Torah it says that neshama, the soul, is the breath of God. Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. God breathed into the clay of earth. Yeah. A breath of life. So life is breath. Which is why you find so much in different exercises, whether it's in yoga or others, that breath is so much connected to soulful meditations and so on. So the Medrash Tillim says, not every soul, but every breath you take, and not one. You should praise God. Now, what's the most, of all the things we take for granted is that we breathe. Who thinks about it? It's like so regular. You're breathing. How many times a minute do we breathe? How many breaths do we take a minute? What is it, 40? Well, it depends how fast you run. Right. 16? Okay, whatever it is. So multiply that by, let's say, a day. What does it come down to? How many breaths a day? And multiply by a week and by a month. It's millions and millions of breaths. Then you go, God forbid, into a hospital and you see a person on a respirator has to struggle for every breath. Or if you ever get yourself in that situation, God forbid. It's like something, you think about it, what does it take medically, scientifically, that everything should be right in place for you to be able to breathe easily without any support? It's a miracle. There's no question it's a miracle. Again, with definition of miracle being not the frequency. The frequency is what destroys the miraculous element. It happens all the time, and everyone's breathing. And there's oxygen. And it all seems so great. So the regularity of it is a blessing, but the monotony of it, taken for granted, is a curse. So the Medrash says, every breath you take, you should praise God, or basically say thank you. So long before the police coined the word every breath you take in their famous song, Medrash Tillim, a few thousand years ago, police is not the police, it's a group, just in case you're wondering. Sting. So, well, that's not his real name either, right? What is his real name? The Medrash is telling us to be sensitive to the fact that the monotony is what destroys it. Now, how do the mystics deal with this problem? The big question of, like, how can something so conceal reality? Imagine you were aware of all the magic and the miracles happening every second in your life. That whole curse, that whole challenge of what we call boredom wouldn't exist. How is it possible that in our minds we can be aware of special things going on, but our emotions and our behavior does not allow ourselves to celebrate? If we were able to see all this, we should be able to be celebrating all the time. Why can't we access it? And especially when things are depressing, when things turn sour in our lives. Why is it that we forget or are unable to access, or as he said, tie ourselves to something above that should give us hope? Why is some people can and some people can't? Most people can't. This is a big question philosophically and psychologically. So the Arizal, in his own inimitable way, explains it with the concept of the tzimtzum, which I've discussed many times. So the word may seem very mysterious to some of you. To some others it may sound like a Chinese food. But the word tzimtzum in Hebrew means a type of concealment, literally contraction. But what it refers to, the Arizal says the following, written by his student, Rabbi Chaim Vital, that because the divine infinite light, Or Ein Sof, submerged everything in its reality, so there was no room for anything to exist, any independent reality to emerge in the face of this infinite light. Think of it of energy that is completely all-encompassing, indivisible, omnipotent. Nothing can emerge in the face of that. So that God, in his own mysterious way, found a way to conceal the light. The example given for it is, think of it as a teacher, a brilliant teacher, who conceals most of his mind and his brilliance in order to be able to teach students that are on a lower level. So he has to conceal a lot, conceal more than he reveals. And a little is, and lets a lot, and spoon feeds. Just think of a teacher teaching children ABC. So when you teach them Aleph Beis, ABC, what is a B, a C? It's almost meaningless. One day that child will learn that without knowing the ABC, you combine letters, you create words. Words create sentences, sentences create phrases and paragraphs, and the deepest and most abstract ideas all began with a few letters. So when the teacher is teaching the letter, the teacher knows in his or her mind all that will come out of those letters. But the student only sees a letter. That's like a fundamental tzimtzum, what we call. Of course, when you talk about the divine, infinite, compared to the human, finite, it's far greater, because the greatest teacher and the greatest student and the weakest student are still both finite human beings. When you talk about the immortal and the mortal, obviously the gap is much greater. So the tzimtzum is so much more powerful. So this is called the grand cosmic tzimtzum in Kabbalistic thought, where a complete darkness, like a black hole, completely concealed the divine reality. And it needed to be so powerful, because remember, the divine reality is what's called emes, truth. To conceal truth, you need more power than to reveal truth. That's what the Kabbalists say. So you understand the concealment has more divine power, paradoxically, than the revelation. That's why Teva is so powerful. So oddly, and weirdly in a way, this whole concealment that so can be such a curse is much more divine than revelation. Think about that. So just to use an example, when a person who's very wise, what takes more effort, for him to speak or to be silent? Or for a person who has a lot of love to give, what's more difficult, to give or to withhold? So it always takes more energy to be silent than to speak when you have something to say. Not everybody. Some people don't take a lot of energy to speak. But when you talk about siyag l'chachma shtika, for a wise person, silence, so they say, I'll give you milah besela shtika betrei, the Talmud says. $1 for speaking, and we'll give you 2 to be quiet. Because for someone who has something to say, to be quiet has to exert a lot more energy. It's like the energy that you have to exert when you are at a table where you really want to say something, you have something to say, but you know it's not wise to say it. It takes a lot more energy to withhold it than to just blurt it out. So the mystics explain, hein gvureisov, that God has 2 forms of emanation. One is called chesed, love, and that's when divine light shines toward us. And the second is called gvura, which is when God withholds that energy, and what you see is only concealment. You don't see anything. So you'd think the first one is greater than the second. The second one is greater than the first, because to withhold divine energy for the divine to not express takes a lot more strength than to express. So in order to give us an independent reality, that we should be able to exist and survive, God basically concealed the truth from us. That's what it comes down to. So sanity and so-called realism is really, from the mystical point of view, actually blindness and insanity. That's really what it is. It's limited perception. But it's necessary, because if you don't have it, we wouldn't be able to be. If we were shown all the forces and the magic and the miracles that are happening right now beneath the surface, we would not be able to contain it. It would overwhelm us. It would destroy us. So what happens is, the light is concealed in a container. It's locked in there. And it's our job to open the container and begin to revealing it. And that takes work, step by step. It's like looking at the sun without sunglasses will blind you. So you take sunglasses and slowly you acclimate yourself. In the example of the teacher and the student, so the student begins with the teacher begins with teaching ABC, but then the ABC broadens out. As the student gets wiser, the teacher reveals more and more. So essentially, the level of the concealment is just a stepping stone to the revelation. So here's the story then in context of Nissan. 11 months of the year are what we call natural months. You are living your life, and you don't have necessarily the power to access those inner forces. As soon as Nissan begins, the month itself, the name, miracles, allows us to begin to open the door to see a deeper reality. And that deeper reality is right there with you. It's with you all the time. You don't have to wait for it to come. Back to Leonard Cohen, he has the famous song, Waiting for the Miracle. Waiting for the miracle. You sit and wait. In Jewish thought, as I shared with him when we were there together, you don't wait. You initiate. It's like the three types of people. People who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who ask what happened. So there are people who wait. Then there's observant Jews who are observing others, observing. And then there are people who initiate. We call it proactive. In business, everyone knows if you want to be a successful businessman, you don't wait. You have to be proactive. Yes, there are times you have to wait, but you have to initiate. And essentially, the month of Nissan is telling us we have the power to initiate, not wait for a miracle, but initiate it. How do you initiate a miracle? The first thing is you got to weaken the hold of Teva. You have to weaken the hold of the regular routines that block us from seeing. Now, can we expect that each of us should appreciate every breath you take every day? That's hard to imagine, to have that type of sense of awareness. It's almost impossible to imagine, actually. But a few times in the day, when you say Moda'ani in the morning, or you say another prayer, to just stop and think that you're breathing and your heart is beating, and there are other things that are happening in your life that are being renewed if you give it some thought, is a way of connecting to a force and a source of energy that's beyond the regular. That's how you go over the sun and not beneath the sun. Or we're trapped by our own perceptions. So this is really an unbelievable exercise. It means you have the ability, without even the help of any other person, to access something that will free you from all your traps. So why can't you just access it? Because your traps are more powerful than your willpower and your belief in that force. Now, that's why we have mashpim, we have teachers, or we have mentors, or friends, or colleagues, people who help wake us up. That's really what that's what Moses was about. What do you think Moses was? God could have taken the Jews out of Egypt without Moses. He got them in there without Moses. Why did he need Moses to take them out, But he wanted a human being that people should have someone to turn to, who's not trapped by all these tentacles, who can help us get us out of the pit. You want someone that's like us. That's what a good friend is. That's what a good mentor is. But the truth is that teacher or mentor or inspiration can only do magic with what they have. They don't create something from the outside. They help you see beneath the surface and access something that you had all the time within you. This, in essence, is the story of all of Judaism, and why Jews are still here today after these thousands of years, because they did not wait for miracles. They initiated them. The immature human being waits. It says, where's God? God's going to do a miracle for me. I'm waiting around. I've been a devout person all my life. Why is God not sending me a miracle? And then you discover, maybe, that the miracle was sent to you, but you didn't even notice because you're busy waiting for it to come from the sky or something. It was right inside of you all the time. That is the secret of all Judaism, and specifically the central holiday in Judaism, Passover. And Passover, as the word implies, means transcendence, to pass over. It means to get out of the routines, which is why we say, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halaylos. Why is this night different than all other nights? Just think about that statement itself. I know it's been used so many times, it itself has become regular. But what it really means is there's something different. Now, is there anything different tonight than tomorrow night? Absolutely. You think Ma nishtana is only for Passover night? If God is recreating the universe every moment and our souls are being refreshed, so there's always nishtana, there's shinui all the time. But there are times you see it more obvious, and more times you can access it more. So Passover, we're told, wake up, things are different. So the routines of the mitzvahs are not meant to be rigid rituals that you just lock yourself into. They're meant to be wake-up calls. There's something different going on. And this night is not the same as every other night. And what do you think? And after, like I remember my own son asked me, after the 2 nights of the Seder, so you say Ma nishtana both nights, great. So then he asked me this like innocently, after Pesach, he says to me, so the nights are no more different, huh? And he meant it like, like we did. And I realized what he was saying was absolutely brilliant in a way. That it's like we do it as a novelty, those 2 nights, but it's meant to carry over. What do you think? Of course, Passover is meant to carry over. So you do it 8 days or 2 nights of the Seder in a more intense way. But then the goal is that the energy of it changes your life forever. May that be may God bless us all with that the Seder should actually change your life forever. That would be something, wouldn't it? So maybe we adults, it's harder for us because our arteries have hardened to some extent and our psyches are tougher and our armor is intact. But that's why we celebrate with our children. And our children can give us a new lease on life. As I said before, we have mashpiyim, we have teachers and mentors, but sometimes our children are the greatest teachers because they are not jaded yet. They have not been trapped by routines. For them it is actually new and fresh. So the fact that it forces us to be new and fresh is a great blessing. But not just to do it mechanically, but actually let your children teach you what it means to be excited about something. And look at children. Buy them something new. Not much, you don't need anything. Just show them a smile. Especially young children. By them, the whole world they're exploring is like a new thing. We tend to dismiss it like little children. It's cute, it's fun, and we enjoy it. Wait till they become adults, and then, they're like... But the truth is, that's how it should have remained. I don't mean that we have to remain on our arms, feet, and legs, on our hands and legs crawling around, but the spirit of youth, of vibrancy, of the ability of being resilient, where you can continuously see newness in things, unfortunately should be something that is not lost and not concealed as the years roll on. So Passover is a birthing itself. It says, we say it in the Haggadah, we say from the Yecheskel, he compares when the Jews left Egypt as a child that leaves its mother's womb. It's a birth. It was the birth of the Jewish people. Goy mikerev goy, it says. That one nation emerged from another. So it's compared to a child emerging from its mother's womb. A birth. So the whole Passover is the birth of the Jewish people. It's the birth of birth. It's the birth of new beginnings. And it's basically a message that the miracles are there right there. And the beginnings can happen right now. You don't need anything to happen. You don't need any force outside of you. It's right in there. You have a soul that is like a geyser, a wellspring of energy that is continuously being refreshed. But you have also an enemy. It's called Teva. That big curse called the concealment, where it conceals and makes us think that because it's regular and it's happening again and again, nothing's really happening. Like someone not letting you see that much is happening, because in your mind, your eyes, your perception, you look at the surface of the ocean cover, and you see only water. You don't know there's anything beneath it. It's our mission, our objective, our goal is to not be caught up in that illusion and continuously, even when you don't see it, to proceed as if it's there. And then suddenly it emerges, because the willpower to reveal it, when it overcomes the forces that conceal it, then what comes out, rushing out, is an unbelievable amount of energy, because it was waiting to be released. And this is something that we have in our hands. Next week I intend to get more in detail, because it'll be the Wednesday before Passover, more connected to the Seder and how we can do this in practical ways, Passover Seder. But suffice it to say for tonight that since we have entered this new month of Nissan and the miracles, you don't need to wait for a week. You don't need to wait for me, for that matter. And don't worry, I won't be insulted. On the contrary, you have it inside of you. You just need that willpower. You need to connect to people that believe in you, and believe in themselves, and believe in the capacity that we have the power to reveal that which is even concealed. Which, if you think about it, is even a greater miracle. Because if you think in terms of the Kabbalistic model I described, that if the revelation of God comes from a certain force, and the concealment comes from a deeper force, so imagine what kind of force is necessary to reveal something that was concealed, that is more powerful even than divine revelation. You get what I'm saying? So that's why it says, Gedei l'maaseh tzadikim v'maaseh shamayim v'haaretz, that the work of tzaddikim, righteous people on this earth, is greater than God creating heaven and earth. How could you say that? God created something from nothing. So the Chassidus says, because God created something from nothing, and we have the power to create nothing from something. Which means to take the something that God created, this illusion that there's a something outside of the divine, and reconnect it to the divine, that takes a lot more energy. So God was able to create. That's not a big thing for a God to create. But for us to be able to overcome the concealment that God himself created, means that we have more power even than God's concealment and God's revelation. If that was too complicated, well, that's good. It's always good to leave with something a little that will give you a healthy nightmare or two, to counter the other type of nightmares. So, on that note, let me say this. Everyone should have a very transcendent and freeing and miraculous month. And miracles come all the time. And when I say miracles, I don't just mean spiritually, even in physical ways, even in material and economic ways. You plant a lot of seeds, and something opens up. So may it be so on the financial level, and on the, of course, health level, and as well as on the spiritual level, psychological. The people that go in with psychologically free attitudes into any situation generally are the ones that succeed, because our enemy is our own fear, and it's our own insecurity. And I see this all the time. You see it even in negotiations. People have no cards in their hand, but they go in with that whole chutzpah, and as if they are on top of the world, and they prevail. So prevailing is not always the one who always has the most. It's the one who has the strongest attitude and the persistence. So if you don't have it all inside yourself, find a friend, find someone that can help inspire you. If you want to call on me, I'll be happy to do so. I'm a big battler against insecurity and fears. And please see myself. I'm also in the Meaningful Life Center. Everybody here, all of us here, you help me, and hopefully I can help you. We're all, as I said at the beginning of this class, souls on a journey, but the journey is in a very concealed place. And we need each other to remind ourselves that there's something going on, a script, a plan that's bigger than what we see with the naked eyes. So as I said, everyone should have a very miraculous week and a miraculous month. And we will be on here again next Wednesday. The following one will be Passover, the holiday, so it won't be here. But then return after Pesach. And tomorrow night, Philip, that guy sitting there with a smile on his face in the beret, Philip will be giving tomorrow night his spiritual creativity class. Oh, the plagues. Very cute. Yeah, the meaning of the plagues. And Philip every week, Thursday night at 7 p.m. right here. And finally, what else should I add? We are just releasing this new edition of the Omer book, which is the counting that begins... Oh, okay. For the webcast. With the counting that begins right? The second night of Passover, it's like a 49-step guide to refinement. And in case you want to have a good CD, it's the soul of the Seder. We have both these things here. Okay? Yeah. 15 steps to personal freedom. It's like a guide through the steps of the Seder, which can also be found, by the way, in writing on our web. If you can't find it, just email us. And finally, if you haven't left your email address, please do so. It's a way of us staying in touch. You also get my weekly column, which I send. You don't have to read it, but you can get it. And we can already say everybody should have a very happy and kosher Passover. I would also add that if anybody's looking for a meaningful Seder, doesn't have where to go, if you speak to me or to Velvel, we may be able to help arrange something that will be a little miraculous, out of the ordinary, irregular. So, any other announcements that I missed, Velvel? Okay, good. And so we go back now to our regular lives, regular programming resumes, and hopefully you can bring something irregular to it, something extraordinary into the ordinary. Thank you very much.